Emmanuel Haro, once known as the friendly mechanic of Willow Creek, is now remembered as the center of one of the most disturbing cases the town has ever seen. His disappearance, his hidden secrets, and his brutal death pulling an entire community into a nightmare of lies, violence, and an underground cult that still casts shadows today. Emmanuel Haro's life seemed ordinary from the outside, almost too ordinary for anything tragic to touch. He lived in Willow Creek, a quiet town surrounded by thick forests and wide fields where the loudest sound at night was the distant howl of a stray dog. At 27, Emmanuel had already built a reputation as someone reliable. He owned a small garage on the edge of town, where he fixed cars for neighbors and often refused payment if he thought someone was struggling. People described him as kind, quiet, and hardworking, the sort of man who blended into the background but was always there when you needed help. It was because of this reputation that his sudden disappearance shocked everyone. On the night of September 14th, Emmanuel was seen closing his garage as usual. A customer recalled waving to him as he locked up and walked toward his small house a few blocks away. But Emmanuel never made it home. By the following morning, his absence was noticed. His front door was unlocked, the lights in his garage were still burning, and tools lay scattered across the floor as if someone had left in a hurry. His truck was missing, and so was he. At first, many assumed it was a misunderstanding, that maybe he had gone on a late-night errand or visited a friend. But by the second day, unease spread through the community. Emmanuel wasn't the type to vanish without explanation. His close friends insisted he had no enemies, no debts, and no reason to run. Yet the signs around his garage told a different story. An overturned stool, a faint dark stain near the workbench, and the unsettling stillness of a space once full of steady, familiar noise. Something had happened that night, something no one in Willow Creek was prepared to face. 2 days after Emmanuel Haro vanished, the peace of Willow Creek was shattered when hikers discovered his abandoned truck deep in the woods. The vehicle was hidden along an old logging road, overgrown with weeds and nearly invisible from the main trail. Investigators who arrived at the scene were immediately struck by the strangeness of what they found. Inside the truck, the driver's seat was pushed too far back, as though someone taller than Emmanuel had been there. His wallet lay untouched on the dashboard, still holding cash and identification. On the passenger seat was a torn shirt, smeared with blood, its jagged rip suggesting a violent struggle. Most disturbing of all, the glove compartment was open, and the small box Emmanuel always kept there, containing old family photographs, was missing entirely. His phone was nowhere in sight, leaving police with little to trace his movements after he disappeared. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. If someone had robbed him, why leave the wallet behind? If Emmanuel had been attacked, where was he now? The location of the truck only deepened the mystery. It was a place few locals ever ventured, a stretch of forest often avoided for its dense cover and unsettling silence. Investigators searched the surrounding area for hours, combing through underbrush and muddy ravines, but no further sign of Emmanuel appeared. For the townspeople, the sight of his abandoned truck was almost worse than finding nothing at all. It suggested that Emmanuel hadn't simply left on his own. Something or someone had forced him off the familiar streets of Willow Creek and into the shadowy depths of the forest. The bloody shirt was proof of violence, but the missing photos and phone hinted at something personal, deliberate, and far more sinister than anyone could yet imagine. As investigators dug deeper into Emmanuel Haro's life, the carefully crafted image of a quiet mechanic began to unravel. What had seemed like the disappearance of an innocent young man quickly turned into something far more unsettling. A search of his garage uncovered more than just spare parts and old tools. Behind a false wall, detectives found a locked metal cabinet. When forced open, it revealed a disturbing collection. Several burner phones, stacks of notebooks filled with cryptic writing, and a series of photographs that appeared to have been taken without the subject's knowledge. The women in the pictures were all strangers, captured walking down streets, leaving shops, or entering their homes, unaware they were being watched. Even more troubling were the handwritten notes. They were messy, frantic, and obsessive, detailing names, addresses, and fragments of thoughts that read more like threats than harmless ramblings. Some entries mentioned arguments, others spoke of betrayal, and a few hinted at violence. Investigators also uncovered records that showed Emmanuel had used different names when traveling outside Willow Creek. In several nearby towns, women recalled meeting men who matched his description but introduced themselves under aliases. He seemed to live a double life, presenting himself as dependable in Willow Creek while secretly cultivating connections elsewhere under false identities. This discovery completely changed the direction of the investigation. Emmanuel was no longer seen as just a missing man who might have fallen victim to foul play. Instead, suspicions grew that he had been involved in something dangerous and potentially criminal long before his disappearance. To the public, the revelations felt like a betrayal. The man they thought they knew, the helpful mechanic who never asked for recognition, had hidden secrets darker than anyone could have imagined, secrets that might explain why he vanished so suddenly. Just as the investigation into Emmanuel Haro's disappearance began to stall, a neighbor came forward with a confession that shifted everything. She admitted she had seen something strange weeks before Emmanuel went missing. Late one night, from her kitchen window, she noticed Emmanuel in his backyard with a shovel. The ground behind his garage was being disturbed under the dim glow of a flashlight. At the time, she dismissed it as odd but harmless, assuming he was fixing something underground. Now, with the growing mystery, she realized it might have been something far more sinister. Police acted quickly, securing the area and digging where Emmanuel had been seen. What they uncovered was a disturbing collection that left even seasoned investigators unsettled. Buried in shallow earth were pieces of jewelry, car keys, and driver's licenses belonging to people who had vanished in nearby counties over the last 3 years. Each item was carefully wrapped in plastic, as if Emmanuel wanted to preserve them. The most chilling discovery was a small box containing photographs of the missing individuals, some smiling in what looked like everyday moments, others captured in candid shots that seemed to come from hidden places. The revelation was devastating to the community. Families of long-missing loved ones gathered in disbelief, realizing that the quiet mechanic who once offered to fix their cars had likely been tied to their worst nightmares all along. Investigators who once considered Emmanuel a victim now viewed him as the prime suspect in multiple disappearances. The neighbor's confession painted him not as a man randomly targeted, but as someone deeply entangled in a hidden world of crime. With every unearthed item, the narrative of Emmanuel Haro transformed, pushing the case into darker and more complicated territory than anyone had expected. When investigators turned their attention to the burner phones found in Emmanuel Haro's garage, they uncovered a disturbing trail of digital activity that suggested his secrets ran deeper than anyone imagined. Each device contained fragments of messages, encrypted notes, and anonymous usernames tied to hidden corners of the internet. As cybercrime experts pieced the information together, a pattern began to emerge. Emmanuel had been active on obscure online forums where disturbing fantasies were shared openly by faceless participants. The tone of the discussions was chilling. Detailed instructions on surveillance techniques, conversations about abduction methods, and cryptic language that hinted at real crimes rather than fiction. One particular username, Night Reaper 27, appeared repeatedly in Emmanuel's exchanges. The messages between the two were unlike anything investigators had seen. They were structured almost like lessons, with Emmanuel often on the receiving end of advice. Night Reaper 27 would describe ways to track victims unnoticed, how to use hidden cameras, and even how to erase digital footprints. Emmanuel responded with eagerness, providing updates about his own activities, sometimes even hinting that he had tried out the suggestions. The conversations spanned months, possibly years, suggesting a long-standing connection rather than a passing interaction. What unsettled authorities most was the possibility that Emmanuel was not acting alone. The meticulous notes, coded language, and careful record-keeping pointed to more than just personal obsession. It hinted at collaboration, perhaps with others who shared the same disturbing goals. Was Emmanuel a student under the guidance of someone more experienced? Or had he become part of a network of predators who operated in secrecy, shielded by layers of anonymity? The digital trail raised haunting questions, none of which had easy answers. instead of solving the mystery of his disappearance. It deepened it. A month after Emmanuel Haro's disappearance, the mystery took a grim and final turn. A fisherman casting his line along the banks of the Redwater River noticed something tangled among the weeds near the shoreline. At first, he thought it was debris, perhaps a fallen branch or discarded clothing. But as he drew closer, the shape became horrifyingly clear. The body pulled from the water was in an advanced state of decomposition, but dental records would later confirm the identity beyond doubt. It was Emmanuel Haro. The details of the discovery shocked even the most hardened investigators. Emmanuel's hands were tightly bound with coarse rope, the knots crude but unyielding, suggesting whoever restrained him wanted to ensure there was no escape. His clothing was torn and stained, and forensic analysis revealed fractures on his ribs and face, evidence of severe beating before his death. There were also burn marks on his skin, signs that he had been tortured. It was clear Emmanuel had not died quickly or peacefully. The discovery of his body forced the investigation to take another turn. Until then, police had been treating Emmanuel as a prime suspect in the disappearances of others. Now, he was also undeniably a victim. Someone had wanted him silenced, and the level of violence used suggested more than just revenge. It hinted at punishment. The river itself was significant. Known for its strong currents and muddy depths, it was the kind of place chosen deliberately by someone who wanted a body to stay hidden. That Emmanuel was found at all felt almost accidental, as though fate had decided to pull him back into the light. His death left more questions than answers, proving that whatever Emmanuel had been involved in, he had crossed paths with someone far more dangerous than himself. As investigators tried to piece together the meaning behind Emmanuel Haro's violent death, disturbing connections began to surface that pointed towards something much larger than a lone man's secret life. Several of the missing individuals tied to the items found behind his garage were discovered to have links to a shadowy group whispered about in the region for years. Locals had long spoken in hushed tones about gatherings in abandoned farmhouses on the outskirts of Willow Creek, strange bonfires lit in the woods, and unfamiliar symbols painted on trees near the river. Many dismissed these stories as small-town folklore, but the evidence uncovered suggested otherwise. Forensic experts studying Emmanuel's hidden cabinet confirmed that some of the symbols etched into his notebooks matched the rumored insignia of this secretive group. Investigators began to suspect that Emmanuel had been more than just a predator working in isolation. He may have been connected to, or at least aware of, a network operating in the shadows. Witnesses came forward describing unusual activity. Convoys of cars driving late at night into the forest, eerie chants carried across open fields, and sudden disappearances of people who were never seen again. The theory that Emmanuel had betrayed or stolen from this group began to gain traction. His body showed signs of prolonged torture, something investigators believed was intended as both retribution and warning. If Emmanuel had turned against them, perhaps by keeping trophies he wasn't allowed to have or by threatening to expose their activities, the group would have ensured his death was brutal. For the town of Willow Creek, the possibility of a cult-like organization operating in their midst was almost too horrifying to accept. But the evidence left behind in Emmanuel's life pointed unmistakably toward that chilling conclusion. Despite arrests, raids, and countless hours poured into the Emmanuel Haro investigation, the case remains shrouded in uncertainty. The discovery of Emmanuel's body and the evidence connecting him to a shadowy group only added layers of complexity instead of bringing closure. Authorities managed to apprehend a handful of individuals believed to be tied to the cult, but none admitted to knowing Emmanuel personally. Instead, they spoke in cryptic terms, hinting at codes of silence and punishments for betrayal. Investigators hoped Emmanuel's encrypted hard drives would provide answers, but to this day, the files remain locked, resisting every attempt to break them. Within those hidden folders may lie the key to understanding whether he was a willing participant, a man desperate to escape, or simply a pawn in something much larger. For the families of the missing, Emmanuel's death brought little comfort. Some believe he was a predator whose victims may never be found, while others think he was silenced before he could reveal the truth. The missing box of photographs from his truck continues to haunt investigators. Were they taken as trophies, or were they proof he had collected evidence against the cult? The absence of those photos suggests someone else wanted them badly enough to kill for them. In Willow Creek, the shadow of Emmanuel Haro lingers. His garage sits abandoned, its tools gathering dust, a grim reminder of the man once thought of as helpful and kind. Rumors continue to circulate, with locals claiming to see strange symbols reappearing near the river and unfamiliar faces watching from the woods. Emmanuel's story remains unfinished, suspended between guilt and victimhood. What truly happened to him, and how many others were caught in the same darkness, may never be fully uncovered, leaving the town trapped in uneasy silence.